Part 1. Korowai. In 1974, a group of Dutch missionaries and anthropologists, led by Peter van Arsdale, made a shocking discovery in the remote jungles of southeastern Papua, Indonesia, a tribe that had never made contact with the outside world. No radios, no writing, no knowledge that modern civilization even existed. They were called the Korowai. The team had been following vague reports of tree dwellers from neighboring tribes, but nothing could have prepared them for what they found. Families living 40 to 100 feet up in handmade treehouses, built from sago palms, bark, and vines. The homes creaked and swayed like something out of a nightmare. Why live so high? The Korowai believed that evil spirits, known as kakwa, roamed the jungle floor. And worse, those spirits could possess humans. But this is far from the scariest part of their culture. During his time with the Korowai, anthropologist Rupert Stash, who lived among them decades later in the early 2000s, documented chilling rituals. The tribe didn't believe in natural death. If someone died suddenly, a fall, illness, or even a fever, they believed a kakua witch had caused it. And that witch could be anyone, a neighbor, a cousin, even a friend. So what did they do? They executed the accused and then, in a horrifying ritual, ate them. Not out of hunger, but to destroy the evil within. Victims were tied, executed, and their bodies ritually consumed, sometimes with family members watching. Stash interviewed Korowai elders who spoke openly about these events, describing them with eerie calm. But the Korowai are more than a horror story. They are master builders, constructing their treehouses without tools or nails. They hunt with spears, fish with handmade traps, and harvest sago palms, their main food, using ancestral knowledge passed down by word of mouth. No books, no maps, just memory. They know the jungle's moods better than any GPS ever could, and yet the outside world is creeping in. Since the early 2000s, some Korowai have moved into government-built settlements. Tourists have arrived, and now tribesmen wear modern clothing, stage traditional hunts, and perform rituals, not for survival, but for money. Part 2. The Aztecs. Imagine it's the year 1519. Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés steps off his ship, lands on the Gulf Coast of modern-day Mexico, and hears rumors of a city built on water, larger than anything he's ever seen in Europe. A city where warriors wear feathers and blood like armor, and priests climb pyramids to rip out human hearts. That city is Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. Founded in 1325 on Lake Texcoco by the Mexica people, later called the Aztecs, Tenochtitlan was no primitive village. It had causeways, canals, and a population estimated at over 200,000, possibly more than London at the time. The Spanish chronicler Bernal Diaz del Castillo described its bustling marketplaces, clean streets, and towering temples with awe. There were schools for every child, aqueducts delivering clean water, and floating gardens called chinampas that fed the city. They even had a trash collection system. But beneath all that brilliance was something horrifying. The Aztecs believed that the sun god Huitzilopochtli needed nourishment, not fish, bread, or any valuable goods, like in other cultures. No. Huitzilopochtli's nourishment was human hearts. Not symbolically, literally. Captured prisoners of war were marched up the Templo Mayor, the city's grand pyramid, where priests in jaguar skins, like the high priest Tlaltecatzin, would use razor-sharp obsidian blades to slice open their chests. The still-beating heart was offered to the sky, and the body was kicked down the steps. Skulls were added to the tzompantli, skull racks that could hold thousands of heads. In 1487, during the dedication of the rebuilt Templo Mayor, sources claim as many as 20,000 people were sacrificed over 4 days. But some victims weren't forced. Certain young Aztec warriors or slaves volunteered, believing they'd become one with the gods. To them, death wasn't the end, it was an upgrade. Cortés and his men, backed by local tribes like the Tlaxcalans who hated Aztec rule, marched into Tenochtitlan in November 1519. At first, Emperor Moctezuma Seco welcomed them, but things turned bloody fast. By August 13, 1521, after months of siege, starvation, and disease, the once glorious city fell. The empire crumbled, but not without a fight that shook even the hardened Spanish. Part 3. The Asmat Tribes. It was on November 18, 1961. Michael Rockefeller, the 23-year-old son of New York governor and future U.S. Vice President Nelson Rockefeller, disappears off the southern coast of Dutch New Guinea, now known as Papua, Indonesia. He had been traveling in a catamaran, collecting tribal art for the Museum of Primitive Art in New York, when his boat capsized. His Dutch companion swam to get help, but Michael didn't. He was last seen paddling alone on a makeshift raft, heading toward Asmat territory, a swampy, mosquito-infested jungle where few outsiders dared go. But this isn't just a story of a lost explorer. It's a doorway into the world of the Asmat tribe, one of the most feared warrior societies in history. Located in the southwestern coastal region of Papua, the Asmat weren't just forest dwellers, they were ritual headhunters, whose belief system was woven entirely around death, revenge, and spiritual balance. To the Asmat, an unnatural death, murder, accident, or disease left a dangerous imbalance, and that imbalance could only be corrected by taking a life in return. The goal wasn't cruelty, it was cosmic justice. The victim's head was brought back, not as a trophy, but as a sacred object. Once cleaned and decorated, the skull was placed in the Zhou, the men's longhouse, where it served a spiritual role, protecting the community, empowering future hunts, and connecting the tribe to the ancestral world. Sometimes, the bones were carved into ornaments or tools, worn with pride and reverence. These weren't quiet killings. The revenge was ceremonial. Villagers would perform ritual dances, chant through the night, and put up bis poles, massive, elaborately carved wooden totems, each symbolizing a spirit of the deceased and the duty to avenge them. These poles could be over 20 feet tall, filled with swirling patterns, faces, and ancestral symbols. The pole was only complete once revenge had been carried out. Now, back to Michael Rockefeller. When he vanished, the Dutch colonial authorities searched for weeks. Planes flew overhead, Navy ships patrolled the rivers, but nobody was ever recovered. Whispers from the jungle told a different story. According to multiple accounts gathered over decades, including interviews conducted by journalist Carl Hoffman in his 2014 book Savage Harvest, Michael may have reached shore alive, only to fall into the hands of the Achanep clan, a group of Asmat warriors. Earlier that year, Dutch soldiers had raided the village and killed several Asmat men. According to Asmat beliefs, those deaths demanded vengeance. A white outsider washing up at the wrong time? That could be seen as an opportunity or even a spiritual calling to restore the balance. Hoffman's sources claimed Michael was killed, beheaded, and ritually consumed. No charges were ever filed. No proof was confirmed. But the rumors have never gone away. And yet the Asmat are far more than the stories of headhunting. Their wood carving is world-renowned, with pieces held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Tropen Museum in Amsterdam. Headhunting was officially outlawed in the 1970s, and missionaries and the Indonesian government enforced new norms. But the spiritual logic of revenge, the carvings, and the ancestral chants still ripple through the jungles of Papua today. Part 4. The North Sentinel Ice. 60 miles off India's coast lies North Sentinel Island, home to history's most lethal isolated tribe. The North Sentinelese don't just reject outsiders, they kill them without hesitation. Their hostility spans centuries. In 1867, survivors from the shipwrecked Nineveh barely escaped as warriors emerged from the jungle firing arrows. In 1974, they attacked a National Geographic film crew, seriously wounding the director with spears, forcing them to retreat. Even after the 2004 tsunami, they fired arrows at helicopters coming to check if they survived. But what makes them truly dangerous is their unwavering aggression. Unlike other isolated tribes who might initially observe strangers, the Sentinelese attack immediately. In 2006, 2 illegal fishermen whose boat drifted onto their shores were killed within the hour. Their bodies were spotted being buried on the beach, though detailed information about their burial practices remains scarce. The most documented recent killing was American missionary John Allen Chow in 2018. According to fishermen who transported him near the island, Chow's first approach ended with an arrow piercing his Bible. Somehow undeterred, he returned the next day. Fishermen witnessed from a distance as tribesmen dragged his body along the beach, and Indian authorities never recovered his remains. Their weapons, while primitive, are lethal. Handcrafted bows capable of launching arrows over 100 yards. They craft these arrows using salvaged metal from shipwrecks, creating tips sharp enough to penetrate deep into human flesh. The island's geography enhances their deadliness. Dense jungle provides perfect concealment, while coral reefs force boats to approach slowly in shallow water, making visitors easy targets. Official government policy now acknowledges their danger. India maintains a strict 3-mile exclusion zone, with naval patrols intercepting vessels that venture too close. This isolation is enforced not just to protect outsiders from the tribe, but because authorities recognize the Sentinelese have made their position unmistakably clear. They will defend their island with deadly force against any intruder, without exception. Part 5. Naga. In the remote, rugged hills stretching across northeastern India and northwestern Myanmar, lived a cluster of indigenous tribes collectively known as the Naga. Among them, the Konyak, Angami, Ayo, and several others carried a legacy that sent chills down the spine of even the fiercest warriors. Like the Asmat, they were headhunters. But for the Naga, warfare wasn't just about territory or revenge, it was purely spiritual. To them, a man's soul resided in his head, and to take that head was to capture his power, his courage, and his essence. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, the Naga Hills were teeming with intertribal raids. Young men were expected to prove their valor by participating in raids and returning with an enemy's head. These heads were then proudly displayed in the morangs, traditional men's dormitories, or hung outside homes. But it wasn't just a symbol of courage. It was believed that the presence of skulls ensured fertility, prosperity, and spiritual protection for the village. This belief system was so deeply ingrained that headhunting was ritualized. A warrior who brought back a head would be honored with feasts, songs, and tattooed marks of distinction. The act elevated his social status, allowing him to marry, own land, and be remembered in the oral histories of his people. Outsiders, including the British colonial officers who entered the Naga Hills in the 1830s, were both horrified and fascinated. Some missionaries tried to ban the practice, but it wasn't until the mid-20th century, with increased government control and the spread of Christianity, that headhunting began to fade. One of the last known headhunting incidents took place in the early 1960s, reportedly in the Mon district of Nagaland, among the Konyak tribe. But after that, the Indian government and local churches began enforcing strict prohibitions. Modern-day Nagas now celebrate their past with pride rather than fear. They hold festivals like Hornbill, where warriors reenact their fierce past in full traditional attire, hornbill feathers, spears, and all, but without the bloodshed. Once feared as savage warriors, the Naga now walk a delicate line between honoring their ancestors and embracing a modern, peaceful identity. If you liked this video, subscribe for similar ones or leave a comment to suggest another.